Today, I'm counting down the most dramatic moments on TCAP. And what happened with this dude was insane. You see, Claude Majub was no ordinary sicko, and you're soon about to see why. So, Majub, who went by the nickname Matt, was 24 years old at the time when he started chatting with Willow, a setup. And as you can probably guess, she wasn't anywhere near his age. And trust me, the conversation that took place between them was beyond cringeworthy.
I will show you heaven, he writes. I love it. I can do that all day.
Apparently, the dude wanted to show her what heaven looked like. But that's when something out of the ordinary seemed to happen.
Majub suddenly hears a walkie-talkie in the background.
Yep, he totally caught wind of the whole deal when that walkie-talkie blared out. But you know what? Despite being on edge, it didn't put a full stop to his curiosity.
Majub gets spooked, but he circles around and comes in anyway.
Dude couldn't resist the temptation to hook up. Little did he know that his thrill-seeking might just be the nail in his coffin. Can you believe it that this moron requested a tour of the house from the setup? You see, this jerk thought he had it all figured out. But bam! The surprise of a lifetime hit him square in the face. Pretty sure he regretted ever coming to the house right then and there.
Let's see. Well, this is the hot tub.
Cool.
We can hang out here.
Literally right back here.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Nope, he didn't see that curveball coming. But you have to agree, this guy really thought he could outrun the system.
I need to talk to you for a minute. Matt, why don't you have a seat right over there? But talking is not what he has in mind.
Yep, no doubt. He came face to face with Chris himself. And what do you know? Majub didn't even waste a single moment hanging out. He made a speedy exit only to land squarely on his face.
Hands up! Hands up! Put your hands up! Hands up now. Follow the direction!
Yep, the jerk couldn't even wrap his head around what was going down. And get this, he was playing it so slow with the cops, like that would make his case any better somehow. But guess where this brilliant move landed him?
Get on the ground.
Get him, Lennox, stop it! Get him!
Now that's what I call a hardcore takedown. But hey, Majub wasn't the only one who had a jaw-dropping experience like that, or a jaw-slamming into the ground experience. Like, let me tell you about Anthony Sorrentino, a 39-year-old who, like everyone else who ends up on the show, found himself in an online chat room, talking with someone that wasn't even half his age. Anyway, check this out. Anthony went from saying hi to wanting some explicit stuff in less than 18 minutes. Was this the guy the fastest mover in the show's history? I don't know. Let me know if I'm forgetting someone else. Anyway, get this. Throughout the conversation, he had a strange feeling that the setup might be a cop. Well, congratulations, Sherlock. You struck gold. But as the chat went on, Anthony, aka John, real original, right? Got the Stinghouse's address and decided to show up in person. As soon as he rolled in, he was greeted by an actor and landed straight at the bar. Wild, huh?
You can sit here if you want. Just sit down. You want something to drink or anything?
And of course, what happened next left Anthony reeling. Chris made his grand entrance. And how?
No, I'm okay.
You are a fast mover. Please have a seat right there. Just please, Sean.
And well, the interrogation began. Chris, being the voice of reason, questioned Anthony about his plans. Our man claimed he was just going to chat with the setup, but about what, really?
Baseball.
Baseball.
Football.
Anything else?
Chris wasn't buying the dude's story for obvious reasons, and yes, he had more than enough evidence to back up that suspicion.
Seem a little more nervous than somebody who was going to come over here and talk about baseball or football.
But guess what? The chat logs revealed that Anthony was up to something a minute into the conversation. Smooth move, Anthony. However, in a twist of events, Anthony suddenly got scared and said that he wouldn't have engaged in anything untoward. But that didn't stop Chris from revealing his true identity, and soon the camera appeared out of nowhere, and Anthony realized the gig was up.
So you've seen the show? Well, now you're on it.
Yep, he'd seen it. Awkward. The Flagler Beach Police promptly swooped in for the address, and surprise, surprise, they found some rubbers and marijuana in his car. What a combo, right?
During a search of his car, police find marijuana
And finally, during the questioning, Anthony spilled the beans.
Well, I'm bipolar, so I'm on medication.
Later, when asked if he would have gone all the way, Anthony admitted he was turned on, but also claimed he would have been too scared. Excuses, excuses, excuses. They always seem to keep them coming, huh? But this is where things get spicy. Anthony was slapped with a 17-month prison sentence, 8 years of serious probation, and a lifelong stint on the registry. And what do you know? Post-prison, Anthony, ever the optimist, tried to find work through online. Whether he successfully landed a gig or not remains a mystery, but seriously, good luck explaining that employment gap, John. What happened with this next guy was even worse. So, meet Marvin Harrison Smith II, or as he went by online, the infamous, nope, not even gonna try to pronounce that. Anyway, this dude, all of 35 years old, worked as both a minister and a restaurant manager during the sting operation. But hey, don't let the regular guy facade fool you. He was as depraved and dangerous as they can, because his chat with the setup proved he was anything but ordinary.
First, he offers the decoy, Erin Lynn B., $250. When she asks, "Why do you want to give me money?" he says, "'Cause I want you."
Turns out this guy had a history of doing this sort of stuff. Yeah, definitely wasn't the dude's first rodeo. Apparently, there was this whole saga of him getting close with another girl who, brace yourself, happened to be way younger. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, this happened.
He then introduces the decoy to a woman who calls herself Phyllis, his girlfriend, and says she wants to be there with us.
Yep. He wanted to throw a 3-person party with his girlfriend. Like, seriously, could it get any more gross? To add another layer of insanity to the mix, the team even took it upon themselves to confirm the legitimacy of his supposed girlfriend. Yep, they went all in and made a call, and guess what? The setup actually spoke to her. Yeah, you heard that right. A full-blown confirmation call to verify the existence of this mystery girlfriend. They really pulled out all the stops to get this guy. Huh. But guess what? His girlfriend never showed up. Smart move, huh? But Marvin? He was right on time. And when the setup drifted away behind curtains, he decided to pull a gutsy move.
Now in our house and in hot pursuit of our decoy.
What he saw there ruined his night's plans. Dude was scouring around, and what did he stumble upon? Bam! The whole squad was in there, chilling alongside Chris like it was a backyard barbecue party. And guess what this guy did? Assuming himself to be the hero of the day, the freak decided to bolt.
Keeps on running, even after sheriff's deputies order him to stop. Finally,
and then he went all in, trying to outrun the cops. But spoiler alert, that bold move of his didn't exactly work out in his favor. I mean, you have to see what happens next.
An officer's taser knocks him to the ground.
That's it. Zapped for good. Well, you reap what you sow, I guess. Marvin was then taken into custody, and during the interrogation, he revealed something insane. Turns out, dude was a pastor. Like, seriously, how can you even trust anyone these days? Well, thankfully, Marvin got what he deserved. But hey, he wasn't the only one pulling off stunts like that. This next guy, who drove for 3 whole hours to get to the Sting House, had an even crazier confrontation with the cops. Okay, so this is Daniel Peter Kelly, a 45-year-old businessman who knew exactly how to put in the efforts to get what he wanted. And his chats were pretty telling.
Have you gone all the way with anyone?
No.
When you do, it will be special for sure.
Disgusting indeed. But the chain of revolting chats didn't end there.
I know you need someone there to wash your back for you, right? Washing the back would lead to washing the back of your legs, to the front of your legs, to the front of your stomach, and...
What was really bothersome was the fact that he knew he could land in trouble. But that wasn't enough of a deterrent to stop him from showing up. And just like that, here he was at the Sting House.
Now Kelly, nicknamed DJ, is talking to our decoy down on the boardwalk.
Yep, all the dudes hoped came crashing down once he laid eyes on Chris. Meanwhile, Chris followed the usual script and told him he needed to sit down for a chat. But Kelly wasn't in any mood to chill with a fully grown male adult. Dude was just too old for him, I guess. And so, he decided to do something else.
Talk to you for a minute. Hey, DJ, there's something I gotta tell you, though. I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC.
Yep, he simply tried to walk away as if nothing ever happened. But Chris revealed his identity to him in a bid to stop him in his tracks. And of course, Kelly wasn't too thrilled about that. And what he did next wasn't surprising.
Kelly makes a run for it with the police in hot pursuit.
Well, the setting definitely added to the drama, that's for sure. And the cops showed no mercy to this prick.
But he doesn't get far.
What do you do? I'm trying to get my fast.
But despite everything that was going on, this dude happened to have an even more pressing issue. This guy literally cared more about his key than the fact that his entire life was crumbling down around him.
Stop resisting. I'm not resisting.
Anyway, on further investigation, the cops found 3 packs of skins in his pocket. Yep, you heard that right. 3 whole packs. Dude must have had some real high hopes, I guess. But guess what? The next guy on the list is a pretty close competitor when it comes to revolting behavior. Trust me, things got pretty tense real quick this time around. So this dude you're looking at is probably the most dangerous man ever caught on the show. Turns out this dude, Thomas Bodnar, had a pretty messed up criminal history. But what he was onto here may have been his worst move yet.
Raising serious questions like, can they be stopped?
The cravings for some of these men are so intense that they're not able to walk away from them simply through their own resources.
You see, this guy knew his way around trouble. Back in the day, he got involved with 3 siblings, one after the other. And trust me, the details are beyond disgusting. Turns out he used to volunteer for Big Brothers in Salem. Desiree Holcombs, one of the 3 siblings' mom, asked him to be a friend figure to watch over the kids. But this dude, he took this responsibility to a whole messed up level.
I would wake up out of a dead sleep to him French kissing me and touching my privates.
See what I mean? This man was pure evil. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But it was Desiree's brother, Ed, who suffered the most. And the reason will shock you.
Mentally challenged. So I think that he had the worst of this abuse. And I was in the middle, and then my brother.
The fact that he showed no mercy, even to the disabled, speaks volume. Eventually, when the sibling's mother learned of the incident, she decided to take action by reporting him to the police. And that's when he was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. A decade behind bars is no joke, and you'd hope that Thomas would have learned his lesson and never repeated this sort of behavior again. But this prick only got worse.
I can't believe that he's still out there doing this.
This guy's excitement was off the charts when he came strolling in like that. But it came to an abrupt halt when he spotted Chris instead of the beautiful date he looked forward to meeting. But what he did next was totally unexpected.
Bodnar runs out the door as soon as he sees me.
Yep, he decided to make a run for it. But what followed next is probably one of the most brutal takedowns that ever transpired on the show.
And gets tackled by investigators.
I mean, that had to leave a mark.
What were you charged with?
My brother, that's right there.
But if you ask me, honestly, I think this prick deserved far worse. And it was high time he was locked away for good. You see, the people that get caught on the show come in all shapes and sizes. Some are teachers, some are Marines, some are even pastors. But this next guy was a freaking doctor. Well, I guess professions really isn't a good indication of character, because Maurice's chats were pretty wild.
She says 30B, but it's kind of big on me right now. I'm still growing. He replies, I will kiss them.
And what's more, he had a hell of a fixation on, oral activities. But the messed up part is he actually had the guts to tell the other person to get handsy. Well, it's safe to say that he was expecting the world when he met the setup.
Follow her into the backyard where she invites him to go in her hot tub.
Yeah, this dude was trying to get all comfortable and even went to the length of pouring himself some juice. But, well, I guess his nerves got the better of him, and bam, he spilled it all over himself. Maurice immediately dashed towards the back door to grab a towel to clean himself up, and what do you know? He found more than the setup waiting for him behind the doors. Maurice, without waiting another precious second, dashed towards the exit, only to be stopped by the cops. And well, the dirty doc certainly wasn't happy about it.
Very far.
Oh yeah, the frustration at this point was as real as it gets. But wait, there's more. Can you believe that he had the guts to lie and act like he wasn't up to anything? Like, seriously. And to make things worse, he even tried to weasel out by crying and begging. Like any of that would actually work. Talk about living in a fantasy world. And the cops, they didn't waste a second before showing him his place. He was then taken to the station for questioning, and oh boy, did he whine.
Nothing to be scared about.
Nothing to be scared about?
No.
I'm somebody who has never done anything in my life besides a traffic ticket, and you wouldn't be scared?
He whined about never doing anything wrong in the past and acted like he had no idea why he was in trouble. Newsflash, buddy. A first-time offense is still an offense. And what's more, he then called his wife, asking her to bring $30,000 for bail and not to bring their daughters along. Nope, he didn't want them to see his real face. Not a very proud feat, you see. But it's crazy how despite all the evidence the crew had against him, dude landed house arrest for 2 months, and after that, he was free as a bird. Like, where's the justice? But guess what? Here comes a bigger douchebag. Hopefully, they have the dignity to lock him up this time. Okay, so 30-year-old William Roach is somehow the smartest yet dumbest guy the show's ever seen. I mean, this guy's chats were nowhere near decent. They're so bad that YouTube's gonna come knocking if I show too much of the stuff.
He sends her a pornographic video and says,
Can I do that to you?
Yeah, if you wanted.
He really thought it was okay to send texts like that. And the fact that he sent her an inappropriate video and asked if he could do the same thing to her really gets on my nerves. What's more, he even lied about his age and claimed he was 19 just to make the setup feel more comfortable. Well, believe me, this dude was excited as hell. But when he showed up at the Sting House, he was a totally different story.
Previous visitor's car.
Come on in. It's freezing. Hurry.
Yeah, the guy was so skeptical that he hesitated walking into the house. Suspicions were running high, and dude legit felt that the setup was onto something. And you won't believe how he decided to confirm it.
And perhaps to prove to himself this isn't a setup,
Come on here. Come on.
he keeps asking our decoy to flash her breast.
Oh yeah, this dude somehow thought he was in the position to make demands like that. And yeah, he was pretty persistent. Okay, so hear me out. If he was so scared of getting in trouble, then why on earth did he come all this way? Seems like a colossal waste of effort if you ask me. But at least his paranoia wasn't unfounded, because I guess you already know how things went down.
Roach decides it's time to move out, and the Flagler Beach police move in.
Get off the ground.
Yeah, the cops made sure he didn't go anywhere, and in the process, he likely injured his arm. But what really made this incident hilarious is how he outed himself with the cops even having to try.
I didn't do anything! Come on, dude, I didn't do anything!
And well, Roach ended up in jail for 25 months and was later on probation for a couple of weeks. Well, I think Jazzwinder, who called San Jose, California as his home, had a pretty good life. He had snagged a position as a marketing manager in Silicon Valley and was definitely rolling in dough. But then, he decided it was all worth throwing away for a shot at a minute or two of pleasure. Fast forward to August 23rd, 2006. Jazzwinder found himself in an online chat room having a conversation with someone he thought was way younger than they actually were. Well, everything seemed normal. Well, as normal as these kind of conversations usually go. Until he started digging into her romantic history. But the setup had plenty of experience dealing with jerks like him, and so she's decided to clap back with a sassy remark about him and his trusty hand. And suddenly, Jazzwinder's ego took a hit. But that doesn't mean he packed his things and left for greener pastures. Things got even more cringe as Jazzwinder bragged about his so-called skills. Think hands, tongues, and I'm sure you can guess the rest. What's more, dude was practically planning a jacuzzi date complete with some hard lemonade. Perfect gift for the setup, right? Well, cut to August 26, 2006, and Jazzwinder was pulling into the driveway in his black Nissan, ready for his exciting rendezvous.
And the men seem happy to see her.
Wow, you got a nice
I don't know why.
As soon as he arrived, he was looking forward to hugging it out with the setup, but obviously, she wasn't having it.
Hang on, you gotta be patient for that.
And that was Chris's cue to make his entrance. And he kicked things off immediately with a snarky comment about hugs, but I'll let him tell it. From there on, Chris wasted no time in calling Jazzwinder out. He confronted him with the chat logs and dropped the bomb about her real age. This threw Jazzwinder into a full-blown panic.
I think I know what this is. Please sit down. I'm not for that, seriously.
He clearly knew what was going on, but he tried to claim innocence by trying to convince Chris that he simply didn't notice her age. Wondering why? Well, because he was drunk. Yeah, he actually said that.
I was actually home at that time, really drunk. I probably didn't even pay attention.
Seriously, dude, you can't blame everything on the booze. Now, when asked about his age, Jazzwinder didn't think twice before shaving off a couple of years.
I'm 28, yeah.
28? Yeah. You sure?
I'm positive.
Yeah.
He even tried to sweet-talk Chris into turning off the cameras, thinking he could walk his way out of this mess. Spoiler alert, he couldn't.
I watched your show on Dateline. I would never do that.
So you've seen the show?
Yeah, I mean,
So
I
you've
already...
seen the show and you showed up here anyway.
As Chris revealed Jaswinder's true identity on national TV, the guy tried to salvage his dignity by claiming something really absurd.
Please. I mean, look at me. Do you think I would do something like that?
Yeah, right. Seeing the writing on the wall, Jaswinder threw in the towel, threw up his hands, and walked out of the sting house straight into the arms of the Petaluma Police Department and Sonoma County Sheriff's Office.
I'm here. Right. There you go.
Best idea he's had all day. Fast forward to April 2023, and the drama was far from over. The Skip Tracer revealed that Jaswinder got busted for failing to register as an offender on July 29, 2022. The guy forgot to update his address, and the law wasn't having it. Originally facing a felony, Jaswinder lucked out with a reduced charge of failing to change his address within 5 days. Still, he got slapped with 40 days in county jail, a year of probation, and a hefty 312 hours of community service. They didn't exactly throw the book at him, but whatever, I'll take it. Now, let's meet a man who decided to pursue his fantasy, but ended up in jail instead. Yeah, this jerk happened to be a teacher who was supposed to help curious minds, but as it turns out, the dude's curiosity was really pointed in the wrong direction. Clearly, this prick was into more than just math. He had the nerve to ask someone much younger if they were willing to smoke stuff with him someday. What's more, he even claimed to be a master at Blazing Green.
He's obsessed with pizza, and he says he smokes often.
Now, although this dude seemed to be habitually flying the high kite, he wasn't someone who let his guard down. When he reached the house, he decided to conduct his own little investigation and started searching the house. And just as he moved the curtains, he was in for a huge shock.
Please let me go home, guys.
This so-called tutor started a rant about how he was concerned about her safety. Now, let's not forget that this was the same guy who called someone who wasn't even half his age his soulmate. Anyway, after a brief confrontation, he was quickly taken into custody, and this is where the drama began.
And you understand it? You're willing to talk to me about? We can talk about what happened today?
Yeah. The tutor started to get more and more uncomfortable as he was grilled about the chat logs. In order to get away from the situation, he came up with a brilliant plan to create some commotion. But obviously, it was a failed attempt.
Please let me go home, guys. I'm gonna get arrested going that way. Please, no.
What followed next was truly satisfying to watch.
Please. Put your hand behind your back. Guys.
Well, now he can put his math skills to good use counting his days in prison. But well, look who we have here. We've got another dude rolling up to the house right now. So Chris Urban's sketchy chat was as shady as it gets. Right off the bat, Urban's motives were pretty dubious, questioning the purity of the other person. It's just crazy how guys like him can be so bold with this stuff, totally lacking empathy. After just a minute or so of talking, Urban went all in, calling the setup a bad girl and trying to mess with her innocence. Then he dropped a warning not to tell anyone about him, proving that he knew his proposal was seriously messed up. This dude was clearly nuts. He wasn't just exploitative, but also pushing someone to keep it hush-hush too? This stuff really makes my skin crawl. Anyway, as the chat rolled on, Urban got even more explicit, making things seriously awkward. He talked about undressing together and diving into other explicit stuff that simply wasn't morally correct, plain and simple. And his insistence on keeping it on the down low while throwing around veiled threats screamed of manipulation. And then finally, it was time for Urban's arrival at the location. He was visibly under the influence, and this painted a picture of a man on the edge of moral collapse.
Including this guy, who shows up to meet a girl half his age.
It's truly alarming how using illicit substances distorts people's judgments to this extent, let alone people who are already engaging in morally questionable behavior like this.
He looks like he's on some kind of a drug.
Chris clearly knew something was up, and so he continued observing the moron's behavior. Urban's attempt to justify his actions by claiming he intended to dissuade her was a feeble defense, especially considering his inhibited state.
I came here to tell her that, actually.
To tell her that she was what you got.
The revelation of all that explicit material only solidified the severity of his intention. The lengths these bozos go to justify their action, even in the face of irrefutable evidence, really says a lot about exactly how warped these guys' minds are.
I can't really do this. I don't feel right in my conscience. Like, I'm a conscience type person.
Oh, and you won't believe what he took out of his pocket next.
It's a 151, but it was this much left, and I put a bunch of water in it.
The legal aftermath raised some eyebrows as Urban faced charges, albeit with some leniency from the judicial system. Urban's subsequent rehabilitation and apparent turnaround in life, as depicted on his LinkedIn page, makes me wonder exactly how much he's changed, and how much is a front for an ever-growing dark side. I'd like to think he's turned over a new leaf, but these guys really keep you guessing. Now, if you thought that was unsettling, wait till you witness the unsettling journey of this 28-year-old dude right here. So Michael Reyes decided that it was a fantastic idea to engage in some seriously disturbing online conversation of his own with yet another setup. Initially, he tried to play it safe because he was well aware of the consequences. But hold up, as soon as the setup mentioned being pure, Michael dove into the deep end, questioning if she was up to going all the way. Dude barely even needed a second of prompting. What's more, he even threw in inquiries about her experiences with older guys and sent some inappropriate pics to boot. Now, here's the kicker. Michael took a whopping 2 hours to reach the place they were supposed to meet up.
You can come in. Hi.
And when he strolled up to the house, he went in for a hug. Really giving me some Jazzwinder vibes here, dude, and that's far from a good look.
Before you do that, why don't you just have a seat right over there, please?
Meanwhile, Chris told Michael to take a seat and demanded an explanation. That's when, in his pathetic attempt to justify his presence, Michael claimed he thought the person he was meeting was much older. But Chris, armed with the transcripts, quickly put that nonsense down. Then Michael suddenly turned into Captain Concerned Parent, citing worries about his own 2-year-old daughter.
It gets to me because I have a daughter.
Oh, the irony. Chris, being the legend he is, revealed exactly who he was, and Michael acted like he was a veteran viewer of the show. It's laughable how these bozos suddenly become paragons of virtue when they get caught, tossing out excuses like nobody's business, and Michael was no different.
See something firsthand and it came back and bit me.
These guys are really cut from the same cloth, huh? After the whole cringeworthy encounter went down, the cops swooped in, slapping Michael with 3 felonies. Later during the police interview, Michael stuck to his "I wouldn't have done anything" argument. But surprise, surprise, sometime later he spilled the beans and admitted that he totally would have done it if given the chance. Add fuel to this fire. Turns out Michael had some history apparently. His ex-wife had a restraining order against him. So eventually, he pled no contest to attempted battery and just generally being nasty online, bagged a lifetime offender registration, and got a 10-year probation sentence. But in June 2011, Michael earned himself a ticket back to the Slammer for violating probation and forgetting to update his registration. 4 years later, he finally tasted freedom in March 2014. Yep, the probation saga lingered on until 2017, and he found himself back on the lifelong offenders list. But here comes a moron who showed up the house in someone else's place. Or well, that's what he wanted everyone to believe. Yeah, so I'm talking about Ernest Timmons, and this dude's wild ride started with trying to change his name to Kevin. He first took a deep dive into inappropriate questions, being hesitant about age. And when a request for a picture was made, he decided to play the cop card. But all that wasn't deterrent enough for him. But before he actually showed up, he wanted to get into the nitty-gritty details of a few, well, measurements. He asked for chest shots and sizes. And when the setup claimed she didn't have a camera, he suggested bringing one along. I can't even. The deception at this point was insane as he continued trying to get the setup to do what he wanted. And just when you thought he'd said it all, he dropped another bomb. The dude had a pretty tight schedule, something on the lines of 30 to 60 minutes max. What, got somewhere better to be? Now, fast forward to the real-life showdown at the Sting House, and the setup was ready to welcome him into the house for a little chat. But the dude wasn't here to chat. He was on a mission to head upstairs and get down to business right away.
Are you sure?
Yeah, can we just go upstairs for a little bit?
Classy, right? This guy's priorities were seriously messed up. It really makes my skin crawl how he didn't even want to put up the pretense of general pleasantries. But as soon as Chris stepped in and asked Ernest to take a seat, the tension started to rise. Sweating bullets, Ernest pulled out one of the lamest excuses that's ever been heard on the show.
To come here to bring the camera and
Your friend told you to come here.
Of course, Chris wasn't buying it, and the awkwardness escalated. The flimsiness of his excuses were almost laughable, too.
Why do you think I'm just as stunned as you are?
Well, you're stunned because you got caught. That's why you're stunned.
Ernest then confessed about his impending deployment to Iraq, trying to use that as an excuse to weasel his way out of trouble. But that didn't stop Chris from calling him out for coming over for a quickie. But Ernest still had more secrets to share.
No, sir, I was a joke.
It turns out the 33-year-old military man is married.
Yep, he admitted to having a 7-year-old child and showed off a photo of his wife taken with the infamous camera. The real kicker was when Chris questioned why a married military man with a child would rush into the home of someone he met online barely a couple days ago. To which Ernest claimed he was telling the truth, but couldn't explain his actions. The contradictions were piling up. The lack of accountability and coherence in his responses underscored the challenge of dealing with individuals who engage in such irrational behavior. As Chris brought up Dateline's reports, Ernest denied seeing them, only to be confronted with his own chat log admissions.
Oh, here's something. You seem concerned about seeing those TV shows of people getting caught.
The emergence of cameras prompted a desperate plea from Ernest, who continued to maintain his story despite the overwhelming evidence. The stubborn denial in the face of undeniable proof is a testament to the length some bozos will go to save face.
Now he'll get a chance to tell his story to the police.
In the end, Ernest persisted in his delusional narrative, declaring he was told by a friend to come over. The sheer audacity to maintain innocence in the face of such damning evidence is truly mind-boggling.
But hey, speaking of dramatic moments, I can't help but bring up this next dude's arrest. It honestly takes the cake.
Okay folks, meet 39-year-old John Elliott, a factory worker whose life would soon change for the worse. Yeah, it's sad to see a man who worked hard for his livelihood give it all up over some nasty obsession. I mean, that's one way to ruin your life, but John didn't really think it through. So this dude started chatting with the setup to put some of his twisted ideas into action, and believe me, he didn't give a damn about personal boundaries.
Is okay with me.
But as soon as I saw your pic, I was like, man.
At first, he spilled his whole life story to the setup in order to gain her trust, and once he'd established himself, he took things one step further. He started to share some questionable pictures that would eventually be key in landing him in some deep trouble. But at the time, the dude was so consumed in his obscenity that he didn't even realize how deep a hole he was digging for himself. By the way, did I mention his screen name earlier? Well, saying it straight up would very much land me in trouble with YouTube, so maybe just use your imagination.
He tells the decoy about his fantasy of being with a young girl.
Anyway, this dude had some crazy ideas, and I can't imagine someone talking like this to a random stranger they'd met online, let alone someone way, way younger than themselves.
You were asking me about what I was daydreaming about. Well, that's it. You and me licking you.
Anyway, to further cement his intent, John drove for over 3 hours to land at the setup's doorstep super early in the morning. And this was after Dateline started getting popular, so let that go to show just how desperate he was.
Okay, out of the vehicle.
Hey, come on in.
The setup welcomed him in, and John took the bait. She made him feel comfortable once he was inside the house, and the two of them decided to strike up a conversation for a bit, just to ease the tension. And this is when John started unpacking his box of fantasies and imagination. But of course, Chris wouldn't let any of that happen, and he cut right in to put a stop to John's messed up conversation.
You seem pretty confident on the internet in terms of what you wanted to do.
What followed next was a string of lies that Chris was finding extremely hard to believe. And just when you thought John would give up, he threw a hell of a curveball.
About all this.
I could tell you're a therapist, I know. I mean, not just...
You think I'm a therapist?
Yeah, the dude was completely delusional. It's crazy how he even came to that conclusion in the first place. But anyway, Chris decided to clear the air a little bit.
I gotta tell you, I'm Chris Hansen. And I work for a show.
Yep, Chris decided to reveal his true identity pretty quickly. And for a second, it looked like John wanted to bury himself right in front of him. But what he said next was totally unexpected.
Just see a psychiatrist because of the way everything's going with my life.
And well, this was after he confessed his undying love for his wife. I mean, talk about damage control, right? After a feeble plea to get some mental health help, John decided to make his way to the exit. And trust me, he really took his time. Meanwhile, the cops were waiting for the moment he'd show up at the door, and once he did, it was quite the sight.
Sheriff's office. Hands up! Hands up!
Although John didn't resist arrest, the cops threw him to the ground and slapped the cuffs on him. Now this might look brutal, but John deserved way more than that. Now here comes the guy who preferred to be known as the boss. Sadly for him, he was soon about to be shown his place. A 12-year-old.
Hi, Poppy. Come on in.
So 32-year-old Joshua Colin, yeah, that's his real name, not sort of crappy pun, had some crazy fantasies, and trust me, this dude claimed to be a passionate lover. Delightful. He was so consumed by his thoughts that he didn't think twice before proposing marriage to someone he'd met like 5 minutes ago. And of course, this is TCAP we're talking about, so there was an entire other layer to it too.
You make me more happier. It's too bad you aren't old enough to marry. I would marry you.
Oh, and did I mention that he was actually prepared to spend the night over at the Sting House? What's more, he even brought his own dinner and even some protection because who knows, just in case you need it, right? Anyway, cut to the moment when Chris made his grand entrance and the jerk's life flashed before his eyes.
Now is the time.
At first, it looked like Colin was sorry for his actions, but out of nowhere, he confessed that this wasn't the first time he was getting his hands dirty. And for someone who was so unbothered about what he was doing, there was just one way to take him down.
Get cops, put him under arrest.
Things got really sketchy as the interrogation continued. Colin said that he had not only pursued his dark desires, but also achieved the target. Well, I'm glad that he landed on the crew's radar. And now, let me tell you about a general manager who was interested in more than just managing his business. So, Jesse Velez, who was 30 years old, was highly interested in getting together with young guys.
Nothing's nature.
And so, on a fine spring morning, Jesse decided to follow his desire to its inevitable conclusion.
But Velez has something else planned for today's menu.
It's kind of nervous.
Jesse pulled up to the Sting House wearing a pair of captivating shorts and a tee. Well, of course he wanted to present the best version of himself, but did you know this weirdo was engaged? Yeah, dude was a cheater too. Anyway, Jesse couldn't care less about cheating on his fiancée. The confidence with which he walked into the house would put anyone to shit. But that doesn't mean he wasn't cautious. The dude knew exactly what he was getting himself into, and when the setup didn't look all too convincing, he decided to put his detective hat on. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Jesse asked for the boy's ID. It was a move none of the crew members expected, and the setup was visibly taken back. The setup desperately tried to fake a story, but Jesse wasn't buying it. So, well, the crew was left with only one option. At that point, Jesse was probably questioning his life choices. When Chris held up the chat logs like a mirror to show Jesse his true self, the dude could barely manage to squeak out a couple of words.
Oh my god, I did not know I even sent that. Yeah.
He felt no remorse for having sent some really graphic pictures of himself to the setup. The pictures were so lewd that it made him feel ew. And Chris couldn't agree more. The moron then surprised everyone when he went on to justify his actions while also throwing a side of appreciation for the PJ crew for undertaking the noble feat of capturing messed up freaks like himself. Yeah, he found it interesting, but I'm more interested in how he was taken down. As he tried to escape through the garage, Jesse was swarmed by the cops, and well, that was probably the last thing he expected to happen. He was taken down by the sheriff of the town and was transported to the nearest police headquarters.
Our garage cam captures the arrest.
What really irks me is the reason he gave for justifying his actions. He stated that he never had friends when he was young, which is why he was trying to hang out with people in order to have fun. The problem here was the kind of people he wanted to get involved with, and his definition of the word fun. But here comes a military veteran who was just 28 years old, and his journey from being a proud military man to a sicko of the highest order was honestly hard to watch. So this dude decided to throw away all the name, fame, and pride associated with his service by what? Pulling something like this? When Steven arrived at the Sting House, he expected to see a young and pure soul.
Circling the house, you circle the house, you pulled in the driveway,
But Steven's military intuition kicked into action, and the dude started to grow suspicious. He circled around the house in order to scope out the joint, and when he was finally convinced, he took the plunge. But that doesn't mean he trusted the setup, though.
Is a weapon in the car?
Yes.
Yep, he refused to enter the house, but he had a proposal of his own to make. He invited the setup for a romantic drive in the rain. Finally, after what seemed like a lifetime of waiting for someone, anyone, to make a move, Chris had to show up, and only then did Steven enter the house. It was time for a thorough interrogation, but the only reaction the military man had was to break down. As for his excuses, don't even get me started on those.
Military, I was a normal person. And, you know, never ever.
Well, he had the audacity to blame PTSD from his military service. Wow. I can't imagine what the world would come to if every person who suffered from any sort of trauma whatsoever ended up in a similar position. But Steven couldn't stop his rant. He claimed that he needed help with improving his mental state, and he went on for about 30 minutes or so, explaining his trauma and his disturbed mindset.
They have a lot of free time, so it's just like...
Well, eventually, it was time for Steven to accept his fate, and although he thought he was walking towards his freedom, he happened to walk right into the arms of law enforcement.
He's handcuffed and put into the back of an unmarked police car.
But guess what the cops found in his car?
They find a knife, duct tape, a camera, and a pack of condoms.
And well, it's not surprising that even the experts were glad he was caught in the sting. The dude was dangerous in far more ways than one.
I mean, obviously those things were in the car for something, and I think that that child would be at significant risk of serious bodily harm.
That was wild. So which of these arrests was the most satisfying for you to watch? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, don't forget to check out my latest video right here. It's even crazier.